So what we're going to do in these next couple of parts is we're going to play with some really advanced modeling techniques, and that is what are called the surfacing techniques. Specifically, we're going to look at things like sweep and lofting, which are just ways to make crazy surfaces. And this happens even more and more now, especially because we can 3D print things. I used to do a lot of making lofted surfaces in the defense industry, and we'd send the computer file out just to cut right into the mold. And that was a couple decades ago. So we've been doing this kind of stuff for a while. So what we're going to start with is I've started a part here. This is my card holder where we're going to do lofting, but we're also going to do some shell commands. And shell commands are important. You know, just mentioned molding parts because it's a good way to make a part. We hollow it out and then we can cut it. So let's start taking a look at this. Our geometry. The way a loft works is you have cross sections and then you tell the computer make a surface between these cross sections, and it does. So let's start out on the top plane, and we are going to do a base boss. We're going to make a rectangle. This guy's 5.5 by 2. So 5.5 inches by 2 inches. And key point to notice right here. Oh, look, it's all blue, which means it isn't constrained. We got to remember to constrain everything. Do it in your favorite method. Once again, I know the textbook likes the X's, but this is the way that I learned using the lines. So that's the way I like to do it. Is either one right or wrong? Nope. The only important thing is that it's fully constrained. That is the most important thing of all. Now, also remember, we got to take these lines and turn them into construction lines. We cannot leave them as regular lines because they're just there for construction. There we go. Okay, and so there's our first cross section. But now we're actually I did a base boss, which I didn't want to do. So we're just going to finish the sketch, and we're going to cancel the boss extrude because all I want is the cross section. Okay. Even though I made the mistake and said, "Oh, okay, let's do this," I was able to exit out of it, cancel it, and so now I just have the cross section. So the next thing is we need our next cross section, but we need it at a different level so we can loft it. So what we're going to need is some reference geometry. So let's grab a reference plane, and we're going to reference it off the plane that we drew on, which was the top plane. And we're going to end up offsetting this one. Now let me see, how thick is this guy supposed to be? Okay, let's make it 1 inch. Okay, and so what I've done is I've created that second plane there, and I'm going to draw on that. So let's go to sketch. I'm picking plane 1, and then I am going to just look straight down on my sketch. And there we go. So I can see the other sketch behind it. So what I'm going to want to do is there's a slot in the middle of our holder, so we'll do that. And we got this nifty command here. We have these different kinds of straight slot commands. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a center point straight slot. I'm going to do is hover here. I want to get the origin. And then I'm going to pull out the center part. Doesn't matter where. I'm just going to stick it out here. And then we'll just click somewhere out here. It doesn't matter because we just need to give it a depth. And then we're going to cancel that. Now, of course, we need to dimension this. So since it is a center slot, it already put all the constraints in that we need. So what we're going to need is we're going to need the width of the cross from center to center, just 3.5 inches. And then we're going to need the radius. Actually, I don't want to do the radius of the slot because since it already knows it's a half circle, if I do the radius, it won't be fully constrained. So I want to do the distance between those two on the slot. So that gives me my thickness. It knows it's a full radius, so we're fine. And there we go. So it's fully constrained. We have our slot there. And so what I want to do is I'm going to exit this sketch. So these are my two cross sections. You can see I'm going to build a surface from a square section up to a round one, and then it's going to make everything swoopy and nice. Yeah, swoopy is a technical term. We use that all the time in the industry. And so what I want to do is I want to go here to lofted base boss. Just like, so these are your swept boss, lofted boss. These are your surfacing commands. You also have a sweep cut, lofted cut, just like you do with extruded base and revolve base. So let's loft a boss. And what it's going to ask us is what profiles that we want to use. And so you see I've got sketch 2 already there. I'm going to choose sketch 1. And as we look at that, wow, that's twisted like crazy. We don't want that. So we do have a guideline. It always puts a guideline in. I'm just going to move it. And you see how now we've made it a little bit center. So guidelines are neat because you can sit there and this is where you can really sit there and twist things around. So if I put it back there, you see it twist. The guideline's just telling it where to build the surface. And on more complex things, we can sit here and we can add other guide curves in. You would actually sketch in a curve and you would do that. And you'd move it around and give it priority. Same thing with these sketches. Part of the reason it twisted when I originally did it is since I picked the top one first and the bottom one, that's just naturally how it wanted to do it. But it's easy to fix with the guide curves. And so we'll just hit enter. And there we go. That's a surface that we would never have been able to create using our commands. So now we have this nice surfaced item. So what we need to do is we need to cut a slot in it for our business cards. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to use a new command here. So let's get into the sketch command. And I want to use offset entities, which adds sketch by offsetting faces and whatnot. But I can't really do that. It's why is it grayed out? Because I'm not sketching on anything yet. Convert entities would allow you to convert edges into curves and whatnot. But so let's click on our top loft. I'm going to do offset entities. And I'm just going to chain pick all of these because what I'm doing is, so what it's doing is it's going, oh, okay, I'm going to offset and always be 1/10 of an inch from that edge. So if you change the dimensions of that, that'll all change with it. And of course, we want it to be smaller, not bigger. So we're going to reverse the direction. So it's on the inside. We're actually going to make it 2/10 of an inch because I want to have a decent lip there. And so now that I've done that, I'll execute it. So now I've got it. Notice it's fully constrained because everything else is fully constrained. So that constrains itself automatically. And so let's just cut it now. So exit the sketch, feature, and I'm going to cut that down a little bit. Now I am going to we're going to cut blind. Got all these options again. So I want to do offset from surface. So what does this mean? Well, I'm going to go to the bottom surface because I always want this thing to come up 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. So if we ever change the height, I want it to be able to always maintain that 1/8 inch thickness. Okay, and so now I will cut down on it. We'll execute that. And so now I've got a hole cut in the top. So it's ready to go. Okay, so I spun that around. Other ways you could do it is if you right click on things, and I actually don't know if it'll let me choose this here. When you're in that command, you can right click on surfaces and say select others, which I didn't use there, but that's another option that you can use. Okay, so the next thing, we want to use another technique, and we want to use shell. So what shell is very useful because it hollows out the part. So we're going to give it a wall thickness. And if you ever do any molded plastic parts, be using shell quite a bit. Shell is another one of those commands that you want to wait. You don't want to do it early. You'd rather do it later, just because things are a little bit, because it's the math that's in there. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to pick our parameters. And so one of these is the thickness. This will tell us how thick all the walls are going to be. We're going to do 60 thousandths of an inch. I need to select, it's the face to remove. So if I select that, it'll shell everything, but it will ignore this face. Actually, we don't want to do that. We want to leave that one. I want to get the one behind it. So if I go here and go select other, this is useful when you're trying to get around things. It'll remove that face so you can see other ones. But so we want to remove that bottom one. Yeah, I could have spun it around there, but I was just showing you. You can shell it to make it bigger. We want to remove material. We'll leave it that. Show the preview so you can see what's going on, and we'll just execute that. So now what that's done is it's removed that bottom face and shelled everything out, removed all that material. Everywhere has a 60 thousandths of an inch wall thickness. Okay, so now we want to fillet these top edges here because they're not sharp edges, so we're going to go into the fillet command. And since I want to do all these edges here on both sides, I'm just going to select this top surface, and it will just fillet all the edges there. And I want to make those 50 thousandths of an inch, so 0.5. And we will execute that. And wait for the radius, wait for my computer to catch up with me. Okay, and there we go. So there's a couple other things that we're going to do with this part in the next video.